Hey everyone, Richard Metal Fan here. Bringing you guys a old school album review, and I decided to do a an album that, well, today is its 15th anniversary, and this is pretty much a nostalgic album for me when it comes to like metal and gateway bands. And as you can see below the title, we're going to be looking into Iowa by Slipknot. This is their second album, which came out on August 28th in the year 2001. Now, this is, of course, the follow up to their landmark 1999 self titled debut album, and I like this album. But with this album, Iowa, I feel like it's like has that kind of elements from the first album, but they kind of like turn it up to like 11, and it's just like but during this time, I mean, there was like tensions within the band. They were like not getting along with each other, and there was a point where I felt like they were gonna break up, and it was kind of shitty, like what they were going through at that time period. But the end result was this album, and what might I say, this is a classic album. And this is basically, for me, Slipknot is basically one of those bands that are like my big gateways into metal. And I remember hearing this album, I was like, holy shit, this is one of the most pissed off albums I've heard. And to this day, I still like this album. One thing to know about his production, this is produced by Ross Robinson. He's a famous producer in like the nu metal scene with bands such as like Slipknot, Korn, and those kind of bands. One thing to know about it, like the musicianship on this album is pretty good. Like, Corey Taylor's vocals, like you could tell like he puts so much emotion into his vocals, like especially when he goes into like really just screaming growls and harsh vocals, and then goes into like has a little bit more of a melodic clean singing. Like as a it's mostly aggressive, but there are some parts where he does a little bit of clean singing, which will later be shown a little bit more in future Slipknot albums. But anyway, the guitar playing from Mick Thompson and Jim Root are just insane. Like they just come up with some really great riffs. It's just really chugging, just riffs, just simple, just over the top, uh, very intricate. The bass playing from Paul Gray, rest in peace, is pretty solid. He comes up with some pretty solid bass lines on some songs, such as like Gently or even the title track. They're just very simple and basic. Percussion wise, from Chris Vane and Clown, like you could tell the percussion is pretty prominent on some of the songs. It's very tribal a little bit on a couple of the other songs, and Craig Jones is the sampling. You could tell he puts a little bit of like sampling and like kind of like in the eerie a little bit and very in the background a little bit. And Sid Wilson's from DJ scratching. You can hear he does a really good job with some of the scratching on some of the songs. And Joey Jordison. Honestly, I think this is pretty much his drumming at his peak. Honestly, on some of the albums or other albums, okay, but I feel like when on Iowa, this is basically at the peak of his career. But yeah, but without further ado, let's dive into this album track by track. Now the album opens up with a little intro called 515, which is probably like around a little bit of a minute. It's very ominous, and it's very kind of just very just creepy and weird. Just like, and one thing I didn't know about this, but until known years later, is like Sid Wilson is actually doing vocals on this. It's not even Corey Taylor. And from what a story about this track is that Sid Wilson, I think, heard about a family member of his dying that day, and that day he just screamed and just let it all out, just screaming death and stuff. At which, now knowing about that, I was like, holy shit. It's kind of fucked up the situation and how it happened, but it's just damn. I just even know that. Then it goes into the song. Then we go into People Equal Shit, and just this basically where they crank it up to like 11. It's just some insane drumming. Near the bridge and stuff, and just some really heavy guitar playing. And I feel like with this song, I feel like People Equal Shit, especially the song name feels like it talks about sort of like haters, and is pretty much talking about misanthropy, like sort of like the hatred of humanity, and sort of like some people are just fucked in the head. And I feel like that's what People Equal Shit talks about. And then we go into a Disaster Piece, which this song pretty much builds right up and just goes right into it. But when Corey just says, hold on to something, I think it just goes right into it. Just destruction over there. And just the breakdown near the end of it is just insane. It makes me want to like break my head from headbanging too much. Yep. Then we go into My Plague, which starts off with an explosive intro. Just a very melodic chorus. And it sort of like a little bit of an interlude, which kind of builds up right there with some very, very good guitar parts in there. And this song was actually featured in a movie called Resident Evil, which is I thought was a cool song. One of my favorite songs from there, period. And then we go into Everything Ends, which has a very good intro, but then it just really gets better. And then Corey just sounds really pissed off on this song. I like this song a lot. And then we get to pretty much my favorite song on the album, the Heretic Anthem, which is basically one of Slipknot's well-known songs. It's just some very intense strumming and just intense musicianship on the song overall. And I feel like with the Heretic Anthem, I mean the lyrics talk kind of like when people hear this, it sounds very satanic, like the lyrics saying, "If you're 555, then I'm 666. What's it like to be a heretic?" But if you actually read the lyrics, I feel like the song basically is from even what Corey Taylor said in an interview, talking about like the music industry. I mean, it's kind of like a big fuck you to it, and some people can get fucked over from it. But yeah, and then we go into Gently. Now, this was originally a song that was from Mate, Feed, Kill, Repeat. I think this is actually a re-recording, sort of like a redone version of it. It kind of starts off very slowly, very doomy like for like a couple minutes or so. Then it just goes right back into that fast heaviness that is expected on this album. And overall, a pretty good song. And then we go into Left Behind, which has a very superb intro. Just some great musicianship all around in this song. Especially near the end is just very creepy. Be sounding like it just goes, like Corey just saying, "We let it all slip away." It just sounds just insane. Just wow. Just this whole album is really good. Anyway, moving on to The Shape, which I honestly think this is pretty much one of Slipknot's most underrated songs. I don't think anybody has ever talked about this song, and I don't think they've ever played this song live ever. But it just has some very good vocal contrast where it has Corey sort of like doing like the clean vocals and then just going like in the same growls, and just the great breakdown in that song is pretty good. And then we get into I Am Hated, which is another song which, similar to My Plague, it's also featured in a movie, but I Am Hated is featured in the movie called Rollerball, where the band actually makes a little appearance in there. And overall, the song's pretty good. It's pretty catchy. It has some heaviness, just some very chugging guitars. It's pretty much around 2.5 minutes or so, a little over 2.5 minutes, I should say. It's pretty good. Then we go into a Skin Ticket. Very interesting song, I have to say. Which kind of starts off very weirdly. I mean, it's kind of has a bit of an atmospheric vibe to it. I feel like it's kind of, but did that intentionally. It's just overall, it's a good track. I love this. New Abortion. These songs, which this gets to basically tell with this song, New Abortion has a lot of the extreme metal influence in this, and it's just very just constantly heavy. It just doesn't even let up. Metabolic kind of starts off very strange a little bit, and it's just some very tight musicianship on this song. It's just like very insane, especially in the drumming department from Joey. This is pretty much one of his best songs drumming wise. And then the album closes with the epicness, the title track, Iowa, which basically showcases the fury and aggression on this album. Just some very tribal kind of like drumming, and this is a superb closer. I mean, I can even tell, I heard Corey Taylor saying in an interview, like, he actually stripped down naked and, like, cut himself. Like, you can hear the little scream. I can hear him screaming a little bit, which is kind of just even gives me chills just even thinking about, just even imagining what was going on when they were even recording this album. But overall, Iowa by Slipknot is a classic. I mean, this is basically just a really great album. This is basically, I think, Slipknot in their prime. I mean, although their other albums are pretty good, but overall, this is, I think, in my opinion, their best album. If I were to give this album a score, I'd probably give this like a perfect 10 out of 10. It's just raw, it's just aggressive, it's heavy, it's just a classic in metal, in my opinion. And so overall, that's my review of the Iowa, guys. Let me know what you guys think about this video. I'll see you on the next video, and keep it metal.